Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp podcast.
Hooray!
Hooray!
Hooray! I am Dr. Ryan Howes, an Omnivore from Pasadena, California.
I'm Dr. Brooke Lewis, also an Omnivore, but from Vancouver, Canada.
Okay. I'm Joanna Boyd, also an Omnivore. Yep, from the Vancouver area.
I'm Chris Boyd, a dinosaur from Coquitlam, British Columbia.
Yes. Okay. A dinosaur. Yeah. Well, sorry. I just spring those things on you guys, trying to keep you on your toes here at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah, that one was really random.
That was pretty random.
How was that primed? Where is this one coming from?
Just I've been reading our book club book, right, which is about kind of the mind-body connection. And although this isn't a book on food, we already did This Is Your Brain on Food. We've done that before, but I was just kind of had the mind-body stuff in mind. And I thought, you know what? I don't qualify as a vegetarian or a vegan or any of those. I'm still an omnivore. Maybe that's old school these days, but I'm still there. So I don't know.
That's good.
I hadn't really checked out your diets these days, so I just thought maybe something had changed. Maybe you guys had gone vegan on me and I didn't know.
I think I'm on my way in that direction, but I still have poultry and fish.
Ditto. Yeah. I can't really have dairy or eggs, and I really eat vegetarian a lot or vegan. It's convenient.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's always good to check.
Just check it in. Just check it in on your dietary restrictions. I know
awesome. We appreciate that.
Maybe it's because I was going to send you guys like a big, paella or something. I wanted to make sure that you could all eat it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Good thing.
That's good.
Interesting.
Yes. Well, Chris, you're a dinosaur. You want to expand on that at all?
No, just in that moment, omnivore kind of sound like a dinosaur.
Fair enough.
Nothing more to that one. It's funny, you don't hear the term omnivore too often these days.
No.
It's usually vegetarian and vegan if someone is going to talk about their dietary stance. There were some carnivores out there. I think it was Jordan Peterson's daughter was on the full meat diet. I'm not sure how that turned out for her. I don't really know the research behind it or the reasoning behind that, but
that sounds kind of intense, considering I thought the majority of research promotes the opposite, that we should be eating, the vast majority should be fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, I think Jordan Peterson had tried it out too, the all meat diet. But again, I don't know too much about it or what the reasoning was behind that. But omnivore, I don't think I've heard that term in years.
Oh. Well, yes, there was a book here a few years ago, Michael Pollan. The book is called The Omnivore's Dilemma, a book kind of talking about the changes in diet and what the ramifications of that might be. But that's really the last time I heard omnivore. So
fascinating stuff.
It is. Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
But
and then I was going to say, on the note of books, great time to remind our listeners and viewers that next week is book club. And there is Joanna's
book club.
It's time for
book club. The Way Out, a revolutionary, what is it called? Scientifically proven approach to chronic pain.
Yes.
Yep. Some of us are farther through the book than others, but I
just got mine from Amazon and I haven't even opened the cover.
Well, you're
we
good.
Have 1 week, Brooke.
I know.
You can do it.
I think so.
That should be encouraging for our listeners who haven't started the book either. You can do it.
Yeah.
1 week to go.
Yeah, it doesn't look too overwhelming. Like the size of the book looks manageable. So
No, it's not too bad at all.
It's manageable and it's well written, pretty smooth, not too clunky. It's fun too. The author's kind of funny, so it's good read, worth your while.
cool. Can't wait.
But I won't give up my appraisals. But we're actually we're going to talk about it next week. So that'll be fun.
Okay,
So
then.
we won't get into it.
Okay.
Okay.
You almost did. You
Almost did, but we won't get into it. We'll do that next time. We'll be fine. Hold off here. Okay. Jordan Peterson got in a little heat down here this last week. Not sure if you heard about that.
Really?
Yeah. Jordan Peterson, former professor, I believe, at University of Toronto, who went on the podcast, another podcast, one of our competitors, one of the podcasts that is nipping at our numbers all the time, the Joe Rogan podcast. And he spoke with Joe Rogan, and they spun some yarns there that and there are 3 hours of talking. A few things were a little controversial from old Jordan Peterson, but that's kind of what he's known for. He's a rabble rouser, likes to
Absolutely. Yeah.
stir things up. So but so do we. We stir things up all the time, every week, with our ambush, right?
Exactly.
Super controversial. Yeah.
Yes, this controversial podcast, we're international, and we try to do what we can to
Maybe
expand minds.
Should we get more controversial? Is that what we should do?
We'd probably get, a few people to listen just because of the controversial stuff we'd say. But honestly, I think we're just here to educate and mildly entertain. Maybe accompany people as they're walking their dog or something.
That sounds about right.
That sounds about right. That's our speed. We're not here to outrage anybody, are we?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
No, we talk about stuff like self-esteem and other stuff. So we're not really there to hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah. And other straightforward topics for tonight, right, Brooke?
It might be.
It might be.
Fingers crossed.
We will see. So Brooke has the topic for the evening.
I do. Should I send it? Is it time?
Yeah, what the heck? Let's go for it.
Let's jump into it.
Okay, so ambushing us with the topic is Brooke. I am eagerly awaiting her text.
Ooh. Sent.
She sends it to me. Oh my gosh, so quickly. I can't believe it.
I wrote it down and then I copy pasted. I actually thought maybe we did this topic as a preface, but I think we've kind of like inadvertently talked about it throughout a few without actually doing a podcast on it.
We have not done a podcast on this.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Here we go. You ready, everybody?
ready.
The impact of bullying behaviors on our development. Are there different types of bullying? Why do people bully? What are the impacts later in life?
Yeah. And so I intentionally did say bullying behaviors versus bullying, because we can definitely get into that, how like the definition of bullying is actually quite intense when we like defined bullying as prolonged and a bit more intense. But I chose bullying behaviors because I think there's other things that we call bullying that don't quite fit that definition, but still have a very lasting impact on people. Maybe it's not as prolonged, or maybe anyway, I thought bullying behaviors would better capture it. And whether or not the long-term impacts, I wanted to open that up for whether that be towards the persons who felt bullied or the bully themselves.
Great points here, Brooke. I'm going to ask you a little clarification here. Oftentimes bullying is something that is talked about in the context of school-aged kids. But we also know that some bullying behavior can continue into adulthood. So would you like us to focus on elementary school, high school age kids, or more just throughout the lifespan?
I think when I originally wrote it, I was thinking more younger.
Okay.
But we could go into the adulthood as well. Well, that could be part of the impact, right? Like whether bullies carry on or
how it affects
yourself.
development, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just know that for me, a lot of clients come in, it comes up all the time. It doesn't matter their age. They'll say, and then I was bullied in this grade and it's really stuck with me, or I think it's going back to that. There's things that are sticking years later that kind of go back to these moments of whether it's bullying behavior or like in really negative friend situations. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll talk about bullying that took place maybe more in childhood, but may have lifelong implications, right?
Sure. Childhood or adolescence.
All right. Looks like a job for the Mental Health Bootcamp podcast right here.
I think so.
As usual, we need to define our terms. What the heck are we talking about when we're talking about bullying? What do we mean?
Targeting individuals, trying to humiliate them, put them down.
Could be physical, could be verbal or emotional, right?
Yeah.
Antagonizing, mean-spirited, persistent, often relentless.
It's often a show of power or dominance, right? Some sort of a play that really wants to establish I'm stronger than you, or smarter, or something. I'm better than you, right?
Yeah.
Can a one-off situation be a bullying situation? Like Brooke, you noted consistent or persistent. Is there something like a one-time thing, which I would say yes, right? If someone, I don't know if you'd agree, or if it has to be repetitive over again, or if there could be a one-time thing of bullying behavior.
Yeah, is there a line between like teasing and bullying?
Which I believe there technically is, right? And that, again, that's why I was like, oh, this is.
So are we
just
more bullying behavior? So we're not going for.
Yeah, specifically like the definable bullying. I don't know if I'm making sense for listeners at all. It probably doesn't make sense at all.
Well, tell me what your thoughts are on because you make that distinction in the intro there.
Yeah, like
building behavior versus bullying.
Yeah, just kind of that relentless, persistent, ongoing, nagging, mean, antagonizing, cruel, whether it's physical, emotional, verbal, intentional, targeted. I would consider that definable bullying versus if it were something that somebody, sure, there might be like teasing, like occasional name calling, or somebody pokes fun at or makes a joke, and it's not nice by any means, right? But it might not be intentionally to hurt the person, although that's the outcome. Or if it was intentional to hurt the person, it happens once, but not on an ongoing basis. So if something happens between some friends in October, but nothing really happens again for, I don't know, until March or something like that, I think that would be relational conflict versus bullying. But both would have a big impact depending on the how the person is going to perceive that behavior and how close they are, right?
Yeah, I think they would both have an impact. I think we would see that if it was something that was constant and constant and also coming from multiple sources, it'd probably be much more oppressive to the individual, right? Like it's a whole group of people or several people who are picking on me regularly. I'm always scared to go to school. I'm always scared to speak up or whatever that might be.
Now, there's also in the literature differences between how boys bully and how girls bully. Right. So have you guys noticed that or read about that?
Yeah, I think I would notice, or I've noticed or read about girls are more social, relational. There's more, there might not, whereas boys, there might be more aggressive behaviors, pushing and more physical threatening maybe, or name calling, versus girls. I think it could be more passive. It could be, but it just ends up being more social and like isolating and spreading rumors and yeah, I
Like
don't know.
social exclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah, the term that I've heard used for girls is relational aggression.
There you go.
Using the relationship as the power tool. So getting other friends to no longer like that friend or like that person, excluding them from the group, pushing them out, and then kind of ignoring their presence, even that they even exist, right?
Yeah, more rumors, a little more conniving, perhaps, where stereotypically guys are or boys are more, I have an issue with you, is a little more overt, it's a little more, could be a little more aggressive, physical, for instance. Yeah.
Sure. I'll tease you to your face. I'll punch you in the face. I'll steal something from you, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Take your lunch money. Sure. Okay. So there's maybe some differences. I'm sure it's not 100%, but generalization kind of maybe fall a little bit different along gender lines there.
And then another one, I don't know, we should probably touch on it, but would be online bullying. Does
Or
that shift,
cyberbullying, yeah.
right? Was it like you don't actually know if that's a male or a female, and does that change the dynamic of that behavior?
Yeah, which is a gigantic issue these days, right? And the lack of accountability. People can hide behind a screen and say awful things. I think it might be shifting a little bit. I know we have a local organization, a mother of a girl who was bullied extensively and committed suicide. Her mom has been a huge advocate for more accountability and for those who are cyberbullying.
Chris, I'm going to pause for a second here. Actually, the term is completed suicide. Committed is something that we're not saying any longer.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just semantics, but it's a little difference there. The committed makes it seem, since it's committed is associated with committing a crime or like an offense on that person. We just say that someone either attempted or completed suicide.
Yeah. No, thanks for clarifying that.
The PSA there.
Yeah, for sure. Also in the gaming world, I know a lot of my clients connect through Discord and they're interacting with people playing the same game, and sometimes there can be some pretty some nastiness on there.
Absolutely.
A couple years. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say regarding the gaming stuff. A couple years ago, there was some news that came out. There's a popular game among usually young boys called Fortnite, and there's sort of a if you're good enough, then you're kind of part of the in group, and if you're not very good, then you're part of the out group. Like you can be bullied for not being good enough at that game, and there was actually a small sort of business going on out there for tutors to help a kid get better at this game so that he wouldn't be picked on by his friends or classmates. Yeah. So that's a whole other realm of like where the bullying can come from. Like you're no good at this, so we're gonna make fun of you.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
pretty
so
wild.
interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna say with the online presence, the cyber and social media and whatnot, another way bullying is showing up. It's not just like a direct attack on the person where they're like, blowing up your comment section or or messages or whatever, but they're also like creating fake profiles of you and then representing you in the cyber world and essentially like slandering you as a person because they're acting as you, right?
Yeah.
And then going out and causing harm.
Yeah. It's such an interesting thing, isn't it? Because when we were in high school, you'd experience certain dynamics at school, perhaps with your peers, and then you go home and then you have some separation from it. Whereas now a lot of the stuff is moving to online. So you can't really escape it. You pick up your phone and you check your social media, apps and whatnot, and there's comments there or fake accounts, whatever that might be. So a bit of a shift there since we were teenagers.
There's another shift though too. It's interesting you bring this up, Brooke, because I was speaking with my 8th grader about this a couple weeks ago, and talking about bullying. Does that happen at school? What's that like? And he said, well, we've been talking about we've talked about bullying like throughout school. Like they talk about it every year. They talk about it often. And the teachers are often saying, if you're being bullied, please let me know. They'll be safe for you and help you help find a solution here. Which I think is interesting. I'm not sure. I don't know any stats on if that's made any impact on actual incidents of bullying, but being an older person, it's when I was in school, it was like, oh, those guys are bullies, stay away from them. And the staff, faculty of schools didn't really have much to say about that. Just like, oh, I guess those guys are bullies, so avoid them. But now it's very much kind of integrated into the curriculum, even like, all right, if you're experiencing this, that, or the other, come to us, we'll try to help you with it. There's still, as my kid was saying, if you go and you tell on the bully, then the bully's going to know who it was that told on them, maybe, or they might know, and then it could get worse, which is kind of the same old problem that a lot of people experience. Like if you push back, what are the implications of that going to be?
Mm-hmm.
But at least it's discussed and more open now that this sort of thing happens, and it can have a really bad, detrimental effect on kids.
Yeah, for sure. Developmentally speaking, at that age of 12 up to early to mid 20s, we've talked before about the increase in neurons, lack of pathways, but there's a huge focus on developing connections. That's what you want during that phase. There's a lot of reasons why that is. It's very important to develop and enhance connections with your peers. So it's a bit of a shift away from your family towards your peers at school. So often it's emotionally charged, right? Those comments or those situations, to Brooke's point earlier, can really stick with you because of that phase within your life, because of your age, because of what's going on within your brain and body during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and going back to our topic from last week regarding self-esteem, a lot of where we develop our self-esteem is kind of the mirror that other people show to us. If they're reflecting to us that we're okay, or we're liked or loved or respected, that can be a good thing for our self-esteem. If we have certain people in our world who are showing or reflecting to us that we're not part of the group, we're not good enough, we're inadequate in certain ways, that's certainly going to make an impact on a kid's self-esteem, right?
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Absolutely.
You're going to internalize
I think
that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I do think there, in some ways, almost at learn or kind of feeds into maybe like learned helplessness, like later on, like what's the point? So if throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, and there's been these attempts to connect or be part of something, find a sense of belonging, and it's always been shut down for whatever reason. And that feedback's been given. I think that's a no-brainer, a contributor to depression, and that sense of why bother? Why should I even bother trying? It's not going to work. People don't like me.
Yeah.
Or social anxiety on the other spectrum, right? Like if the emotions are going down or the emotions going way up, but fear of being accepted or not, and or being laughed at or ridiculed, and that can carry on for quite some time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree. Like, because this is so ingrained in us to develop and foster strong connections, I think a lot of youth and kids, they try so hard, right? They're
Mhm.
patient with it, and they think out of the box, and they, it becomes their whole focus. But if it's not working for them, that's where the learned helplessness comes in, and I think that's makes them more susceptible to experiencing the depression later, right? Because if you're
Or
not part of
trust
that,
issues.
yeah, trust.
Mhm.
That one comes up so often. Oh, I have trust issues, and poke around. And where does it come from? My best friend in grade 6, I went to school and then she didn't want to be my friend anymore. And I didn't know why. And da, 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 da. Like there's just, it's amazing how often it kind of goes back to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, constantly. We have these memories that pop into our minds. There's a reason why they're kind of there. Often there's some feelings and sensations associated with them, and usually it's the childhood and teenage years where these thoughts are stemming from.
Can I tell it's probably, I may have told this before, but can I tell the learned helplessness research just to maybe
Sure.
illustrate that point a little bit?
Go for it.
So a long time ago, back in the 60s, when scientists were allowed to torture animals at will, still is done sometimes, but they used to do that willy-nilly back in the day. They were doing research with a dog, probably several dogs, but at least one dog in particular that they had the dog in a small cage, and they had a metal floor, and they were trying to teach the dog to it's a conditioned response thing. So they would shock the floor of the cage, and the dog would hit a lever in order to get to stop the shock. They was trained to do that. So they would shock, and the dog would hit the lever, and shocking would stop, and that was a successful treatment. Like they taught the dog, good, you learned. At one point, this experiment went kind of haywire. The shocking, the lever wasn't stopping the shock any longer. So they shocked the floor. The dog hits the lever. Nothing happens. The shock is still there. Hits the lever again. Hits the lever again. Then still receiving the shock, and like, oh my gosh, the lever doesn't work anymore. Dog's trying to jump out, get out, claw its way out, can't get out. And then this interesting thing happens. The dog, at this point, when it realizes there's nothing I can do about this, the dog just lays down on the floor and just takes it. And that became this concept of learned helplessness. There is nothing I can do to change this bad behavior, bad stimulus, those bad consequences happening to me. I can't stop it. So I might as well just lay down and take it. And that has been that was kind of taken to the world of depression studies. Is like, wow, that seems really similar to what a lot of people experience with depression. I've tried to change my circumstances. I've tried to make a difference, but I don't feel like I have any power to change anything. So I might as well just lay down and take it. And I think that certainly applies to what we're talking about with depression, where some kids who are like, you're picking on me. I'm trying to be your friend. I'm trying to maybe tell somebody about it. Nothing's happening. I'm just getting picked on. I guess it's just hopeless. I'm just going to learn. I've learned to be helpless in this situation. There's nothing more I can do. And that's a very much a major precursor to major depression.
Jana, did you have your hand up?
I was just yeah, it's really interesting, Ryan. I was just wondering, is there a point to which the body's nervous system might kick in and there's almost like a freeze mode or a shutdown mode. After, you know, like I gotta go inward because I can't get out of this. Is that?
I would imagine so. I could
Yeah.
only theorize on that, but I would say that certainly the sense of I can no longer be effective. There's nothing I can do, so I might as well just kind of lay down and sure, kind of the possum sort of freeze mode. I think would certainly apply there.
Mm.
I'll just take the beating and kind of hope, I guess, that it'll stop because there's nothing I can do about it.
Mm.
Very,
What's
very
unfortunate
horrible
is
situation.
that it then carries forward to realize that, you know, that it was in a temporary situation. It wasn't, the situation will eventually change. You're not going to be in the same class with those people. You're not, that they're not going to carry with you through life and all of these different, yeah. Anyway,
Which is
eventually
why
the situation changes.
which is why so many people, you know, are so distraught and so upset when a young person does complete suicide, because they're like, oh my gosh, this was a time in your life, things can get better, things will get better, but the adolescent brain can't often see past that, and especially an adolescent brain that is has already learned helplessness. They're like, life is never going to get better, why keep going, you know?
Yeah.
And some of the, you know, bullying behaviors that they could experience are incessant, right? And just having the idea of having to go through that on a daily basis, and it's been going on for weeks and you got to do this for years, like, whew, like I bet you just feel like you got to get out of there. There's no ending the pain or whatever's going on, right? So I just couldn't imagine being in that place that that can't, school can't do anything. They know they had a fat, like, you know, I've never been in that position, thankfully, but I would imagine it's hard, you know, the one day this will be gone or this won't be a thing or it'll be behind you. Gosh, I wish that had more power, but it doesn't help the kids who are dealing with it on a daily basis.
And it's tough too, circling back to the role of technology in this. So
Mm-hmm.
the gal up here that Chris is referring to, it's quite a famous case. So the gal that passed away, her name's Amanda Todd. And what happened for her, she was in grade 9, I think, when it was happening, but she tried switching schools 2 or 3 different times. She tried to get away from it, but unfortunately the bully is an adult from a different country who's now back and being tried, like currently. So charges are going to be laid against him, I hope.
Actually extradited to Canada, which is a big deal, to face charges.
To face charges. So, but part of her story was no matter where she went, she would go to a different school and she would think things are going okay. And then all of a sudden, word would get out about what was going on at the last school. And now all of a sudden there was the group of people that would bully her there. And so then she went to, so she ended up going, I think, to 3 different schools, and it just followed her around. So even doing what she could to change her situation, she just didn't feel she was ever going to get through it, right?
A lot of it's like, again, physiological, right? Based on that age. Like, I'm sure we've all had experiences where you were excluded or left out of something. We're invited to a birthday party or whatever it might be. There was like it's not just, it's the implicit part of ourselves. It's they say the implicit or unconscious mind's a million times more powerful than our conscious mind, right? So I think that's what people tend to remember years down the road. It's the feelings that they had, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much that was so impacted their sense of identity and self-esteem and self-worth. So it kind of imprinted on them, right? But there's a lot of reasons why, like, you know, we have high school reunions. So we go back and reminisce on this 5 years of our life. We've had lots of 5-year segments in our lives that we don't go back and rehash and connect with the people during that phase. There's a reason why I think it's such an influential time, right?
Right. What if I had a reunion for the time between I was, you know, 30 2 and 36.
For sure.
Hey, who was I with there? Hey, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's true, Chris. It's such a key developmental stage of development there. And even as when people do those reunions, it's like, here's who you were then, and then here's who you are now. You're like, maybe you've developed a completely different person by that point. Like life changes for everybody, and that's kind of the fun of going to a reunion, is seeing who's how life has changed for people.
Yeah, for sure. But that bullying term is diversified so much. I guess this is one big point we're trying to make. It's not like the watching the movie Billy Madison with the O'Doyle family, or O'Doyle rules.
Yeah.
This is the family of bullies, larger than the rest of the peers, who goes and kind of picks on one person in the class, and it's kind of relentless. I think it's diversified so much these days. Often might be even like, it's very cliquey. Often can be quite cliquey. So sometimes it's more the popular kids, for instance, who might be excluding others, or for whatever reason. So yeah.
I like this question you have here, Brooke. Why do people bully?
Yeah.
And I like this because we, especially in our profession, we spend a lot of time focusing on the people who have been the recipients of negative behavior, right? And there are portions of mental health that focus on the perpetrators, but I think it's less so. Like, we don't spend enough time really talking about, well, what happened so that this person ended up hurting someone else, and what's that about? And if necessary, what can we do to help them, either in a preventative or a post sense? And there are a lot of grown-ups walking around who were the bullies, and maybe they feel a lot of guilt about that. Maybe they've changed, and they're feeling like, oh my gosh, I bullied several people, or maybe I even bullied someone to the point where they hurt themselves, or they developed some sort of complex about that. And so I think it is important for us to take a look at that side of things too. I think mental health requires a look at both of those sides, right? Certainly we want to pay attention to the people who are victimized, but what about the people who perpetrated that?
Yeah. And I rarely do I ask clients directly, like, if they were a bully, but they often say things that make me think they might be, like, those are not my best of years, or I was a shithead back then, or
I did a lot of things I wasn't proud of.
I did a lot of things I wasn't proud of. Like, people come in and I think they do hold a lot of regret and shame when they realize what they've done and the impact that probably had on those people. And I think it's quite deep, that shame, and it is impacting them or coming out in a different way. And I do think that there's a lot of trauma with that. There was Dreikers, which is kind of like an Adlerian, of course, bring up the Adler, but he was a big fan of like encouragement and praise and stuff. And so he said, if there's two young kids and they're having a fight and one kid punches the other kid, who do you hug? And Dreikers would say you would hug the guy that did the punching, the kid that punched, not the kid that got hurt. Like, you would hug the other one first, because chances are that kid is going through something that's quite big to make him act out in that way.
Sure.
Right. So trying to take a look at, where is that negative behavior even coming from? And what is that home life like? And what has this child been through to feel that the need to do that?
Yeah. Imagine being the kid that got punched in the face, though.
I know,
Like,
and then you
what the
didn't get a
hell?
hug. I know.
Yeah.
I think it was just to, like,
Yeah, to
make you
highlight
think.
how that one's
I think
hurting.
they all deserve a hug.
I agree.
There's a movie that came out in 2010 called Greenberg. It had Ben Stiller was the main character in that movie, and a quote came from that movie, which I'm sure has been around for much longer than that film, but it's what left a mark for me, where he says, hurt people hurt people.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really important point for us to remember. It's not to let people off the hook or to say, to excuse away everyone's behavior, but to understand how are bullies created, because I believe they are created. I believe it's more nurture than nature oftentimes, and that oftentimes if you were to look into the life of a bully, you would probably see some pattern of themselves being bullied or some aggression in their own family. Maybe they had an
self-esteem stuff.
an older sibling that may have bullied them, some
Mhm.
self-esteem stuff, some things that made them feel like I'm powerless. And for whatever reason, they felt like the way for me to gain power is to dominate other people, either verbally or physically or otherwise that we're talking about. And so this is a hurt person who is hurting another person.
Mhm.
And again, this is not to excuse any of the behavior that bullies inflict, but it's to say, okay, this may go deeper and maybe even like a more generational thing or
Mhm.
go down the line here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think understanding is definitely different than giving permission to.
Right.
And once we understand, I think there can be a bit of a paradigm shift or a perspective shift to say, what are we going to do about this? And yes, there needs to be consequences for that behavior, but we also maybe want to rope in, let's get this kid some support. Like, let's get some counseling and let's find out what's going on at home. And like, this is a red flag, and let's investigate this further, opposed to let's put you in juvie and make this worse.
Mhm.
Sometimes
Or-
you have to do that. Sometimes juvie is necessary, but there, I think there needs to be a balance there.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think support needs to go to both people for sure,
Mhm.
instead of just get out of here, you're suspended, go back home. That might be where the issue is.
Mhm.
It's interesting because as I'm thinking about this, like the hurt people thing and someone being sent to juvie, I guess in my head that I'm thinking more of the boys and the physical stuff, right? I'm curious about what you guys might think about the female side of things, where it's maybe more verbal or relational bullying, as you're talking about, right? Not to say that's not also coming from a place of hurt too, but are there other components maybe, like what would cause the Mean Girls situation, right? From the movie Mean Girls, like we're a group of girls and we're gonna exclude this other person and maybe spread some rumors about her. Where do you think that might come from?
Joe, do you have any thoughts?
I don't think it's too far from what would
Okay.
make someone else hurt someone else. I don't know. I think what's going on for that person, I'm curious if someone's hurting someone else, or is they're seeking power, or are they seeking control? Maybe they feel, I don't know how
Oh,
Is she frozen?
long, and sometimes,
oh,
Am I
we
frozen?
froze Joe. Maybe they feel what?
Oh, am I unfrozen?
Yeah.
I don't know, just seeking we all want to belong, but I think I think there could be self-esteem things there, insecurities, right?
Mhm.
Wanting to kind of be at the top or be the one doing the talking about other people, so you're not receiving it.
Mhm.
I think there's a group mentality, like you just want to fit in, so you might do things or say things to other people if that's what the group's doing, kind of the follower mentality there. But I don't think it's far from what would make someone punch someone out.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't know if for guys it is like a physical power piece, but for girls it's the social power piece, right? So if you're going to feel threatened that someone's going to take your social hierarchy, that you're going to have fewer friends if this person thrives, because everyone's going to want to be their friend, and then they're not going to want to, there's not going to be enough room for you, then you're going to take them out.
I can see that. Sure. You're a threat to my social status, right? I was most popular in the class, but if you're threatening that, then I want to make sure that I knock you back into place.
Or maybe not even social status, but belonging. Like, these are my friends and they're my crew. And if you're going to take them, I'm not going to allow that, right? Like, it's kind of territorial, like socially territorial, without it necessarily being popularity, because this dynamic could happen for the popular kids or the less popular kids. It doesn't really matter. It's threatening that sense of belonging and connection.
Yeah.
Sure.
Is it like sensing a threat? Like this person is a threat to you somehow.
Yeah.
In terms of you may lose connection. You may lose that, your partner. You might be seeking the same boy. It could be.
Or your best friend.
Or your
You're
best
gonna
friend.
lose your best friend.
Or maybe it's jealousy. Perhaps.
Maybe you're not feeling good about yourself, so you might not realize that, but projecting it onto other people or making other people feel bad for
projection.
Yeah.
Sure. That's I can see that. It's I guess it's an insecurity on regardless of the gender stereotype here, but it's manifests in a different way. Like you may be a threat to me, to my group or to my status or to my identity in one way, so I want to knock you down so that you don't continue to be a threat in that way. And the way I do that could be differently.
Yeah. And I think too, there's, depending on how you're raised or different things, there could just be differences and you're different from me. So, and I'm going to make you feel bad for that or whatever, right? Like, I don't know if a threat's there every time someone bullies, but there could be just beliefs or different. Yeah, we look different. You're different. You're doing something weird. I'm going to make fun of you for it. Like, yeah, I think there's all kinds of things there at play.
That might be driving that. Yeah. Yeah.
Boo to bullying.
I know.
Blech.
So I
Yuck.
do appreciate that there is, in the past handful of years, like a lot more education and awareness brought up in schools and in homes about that, and efforts to, like, not just what supports can we have around helping the victim or helping the bully, but also teaching other people in the school just how can you help. So if there is someone new at school, make sure you introduce yourself, or if you notice someone is sitting alone, go and sit with them or ask them how their day is. If you can see that someone doesn't have a lot of friends, maybe learn their name and say hello to them when you're in class. Like, what can you do to reach out to the people that you can see aren't being included, even if it's in a really small way? And so I think there's been a big movement for that type of buffering, which is, I think, has been extremely important.
I agree. I think empowering the students, other students, right?
Yeah.
I think you guys have all seen Ted Lasso, right? And one of the equipment managers is being kind of picked on by some of the players, and another player noticed potential leader on the team says, "Why aren't you going to go do something to the coach?" And the coach is like, "No, if I do, he's probably gonna make it worse. You're gonna come down way harder on him." So basically insinuating that the leader on the team needs to step up and take care of it, right? Which he ended up doing. So yeah, I think empowering other students perhaps and educating them that way, because often it does take a lot of strength and courage to do so, and we don't want any harm to be caused to anyone, of course, but how powerful that can be for someone to stand up for you, one of your classmates versus a teacher.
Which is where our pink shirt day came from. We've talked about that on a previous podcast in the banter. So that's anti-bully day up here. And it was a young boy went to school. He was wearing a pink shirt. People bullied him. So the next day, some of the cool kids showed up the guys wearing pink shirts to make a point. And yeah, it's just grown and grown and grown. So now we have this National Pink Shirt Day, which is Anti-Bully Day.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So just all, those different things. Yeah.
Yeah. And those tend to be the stories and the things that are inspirational at this point in our history, like when someone who's been marginalized, someone who's different, someone who looks different or has different abilities is really celebrated by their classmates. That's inspirational, and it's something that we see as a really positive thing. Of course, that doesn't happen everywhere, and it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen with all the students who feel left out, but it's nice that at least there's an identification of the fact that, hey, different doesn't mean worse. I mean, everyone's valuable. Everyone has worth and value. So let's recognize that, and let's appreciate that. Another point that you raised in the questions here, Brooke, were what are the impacts later in life, which I think is really interesting too, because certainly, as we talked about, maybe some bullies can take some guilt or shame into their later life, but certainly those who are bullied absolutely can take that. And those same sort of feelings can be maybe triggered or they find themselves in a certain circumstance and like, oh no, the boss is asking something of me and I feel like I'm being bullied again, right? So these same sorts of things, if not really worked through deeply and deeply understood, we can re-experience the same sort of feeling on through life, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what have you seen, and how does that manifest in adults when this bullying stuff has taken place?
I think a lot of it is physiological. That sensation in your heart, that the pain in the stomach, the intrusive or quick negative thoughts about yourself, or overanalyzing or avoiding. Like often it's can be quick and intensive, and it takes a bit of awareness to recognize.
There could be timidness in social relationships, or trying to get to know other people, or am I going to be judged? Can I open up to them? Is there something going to be used against me? Trust. Yeah.
And I think a lot of like negative mind reading, assuming what other people are thinking of you without really much evidence. So whether that be a colleague or an acquaintance or whatever it might be, someone new, where all of a sudden you're assuming that they're thinking negative things about you when they're probably not. They're probably thinking about, what they're going to have for lunch or whatever it might be.
Yeah, for sure. I think we all have different defense mechanisms that we create to deal with really difficult, challenging situations. So reading into scenarios and erring on the side of caution. I have a client who was bullied a bit in his teenage years, and he's in his later 20s now. But for him, if someone makes a joke about him, he'll lash out a bit and quickly and sharply, comment or just kind of attack mode, right? And then usually that stops it. But of course, that defense mechanism is kind of working against him in lots of other ways. So,
so really, what it is it's this interesting thing that the human brain does, where even if we might be 20, 30 years removed from these incidents, when we start to feel like, uh-oh, it's happening again. Like, any sort of signal sort of tells us that, oh, the bullying is on and it's happening to me right now. We tend to go right back to that same place of my whole social world is exploding, or all my status is exploding, whatever that might be. I'm being attacked on all fronts. And we can respond as if it were happening the first time.
Mhm.
For sure. You can read into that situation incorrectly. You could be overly aggressive. You could hide. You can remove yourself. You can analyze the heck out of
Avoid.
it. So go home and you just analyze it. And in the end, you find out it wasn't a big deal, or they weren't actually intending what you thought they did. Like it's that idea that sometimes our reactions have the magnitude of past situations, right? So bullying can definitely show up in that way. That a comment from someone, you react harshly to it, and that might be stemming from that.
Mhm.
True.
Yeah. I think sometimes loneliness, but a fear of reaching out and developing relationships as well. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Like having a bit of a life of solitude.
Being very careful about who you hang out with. Some clients who've experienced bullying, they're very, very nervous and anxious around new people. So when they go to a party, for instance, they have quick judgments or are not quite themselves around new people until they realize this person's safe, and then they kind of open up a bit and they connect on a deeper level.
Well, and let me just be explicit about the fact that what we're talking about when we talk about bullying is trauma.
Oh yeah.
It's
I didn't want to bring it up, you know.
You bring the trauma person, so I'll bring it up for you.
Thanks.
Absolutely, sure. It's a trauma. It's a trauma that someone experiences, and it could be as Joe was talking about, it might be a one-time trauma, or it could be trauma that's experienced over time. And as it is with trauma, with in the most extreme case, post-traumatic stress disorder, it's something that we can relive, something that can be triggered, something that we can re-experience. And if we were traumatized at 14 and we have all these physical sensations and these thoughts that come up and feelings, and then at 34 something similar happens, it's quite possible that we could re-experience some of that trauma or be kind of transported back to that same set of feelings that we experienced. Would you say so, Brooke? Trauma?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
And Joe. Joe does a lot of trauma.
Yes, of course, both you do. Sure. Yeah. So bullying and trauma are kind of
Synonymous.
synonymous, really. Yeah. And so it's not surprising that we might experience, if we were traumatized younger, then we're going to experience some of the same symptoms later on in life.
Yeah. And it's really tricky because it is like a relational trauma for a lot of it. So therefore the triggers later on in life might be more subtle. It might be, I don't know, somebody looking at you a certain way, or walking into a room and people were talking and then they stopped talking, or hearing that two people went for coffee and they didn't invite you, or there might be really quite a bit more subtle, versus if you're in a car accident and you were turning left and got hit, and I were to say, okay, every time you turn left, like it's much more overt versus a tone or a look.
Yep. So what can we do then, Brooke, or Chris or Joe, anybody? What is it that someone can do in their adulthood? Say that you were bullied. Maybe we can talk about if you were the bully, but what is it that might be helpful for someone who was bullied, and they start to re-experience some of these things with coworkers or bosses or spouses or whatever it might be? How do we help them as mental health professionals?
Could help them identify kind of what's triggering them, or what memories are being brought up, and allow them space to kind of identify some of those feelings and how it's feeling in their body, thinking of those memories. And maybe there's an opportunity to kind of tackle some negative thinking patterns from that kind of started back then, and try to challenge those a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah, somatic stuff to work with the physical reactions that are coming up, right? So if, because viscerally in your body, you're going to feel things. And this also comes up as we're talking about adults. Another one where could impact them is if you have children, and when your children are the age that you were when you were bullied, that's actually a big trigger. So now, you know, your daughter's 14 and all of a sudden you're feeling anxious all the time. And this, it could be related, right? So how do you decompress that body, and how do you relax and trying to reset that, understanding that you're being exposed to a trigger, but it's not actually threatening. So desensitizing that trauma trigger for yourself.
That's great.
Sure. Yeah, I think connecting those dots can be great. Kind of piecing it all together, realizing that, you know, I think we talked about this before, that if your reaction doesn't fit the situation, it's probably feeling memory or body memory. So trying to pinpoint that can be helpful, and to process that, do some writing about that, but ultimately trying to calm that physiological reaction. So calm the body and shift the mind, right? Take that deep breath and realize that these are probably feeling memories, body memories. Do some grounding exercises, whatever that might look like, and then shift the mind. So you can repeat a mantra, or, you know, step into that discomfort a bit and realize that what you face in the past doesn't necessarily have to repeat itself moving forward, right? The circumstances are different.
Yeah, that's what I'd piggyback on, is that the circumstances are different. I mean, being a child or an adolescent there's an inherent powerlessness that goes along with that, it's easy to slip back into that. Like, I don't have a voice, I can't make a stand, or there's nothing I can do here, that learned helplessness that you had. But as an adult, if you're feeling that way, for one thing, if you are an adult, then you survived what it is you went through in the past, and that bit of resilience can be nice to lean on and say, wow, I made it through that, maybe I can make it through this here too. But also, I may have more resources now, I may have more of a voice, more people to reach out to, things I can do to help me not re-experience what I experienced in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then there's also trauma treatment stuff like EMDR or yeah, just different things that people can do should there be different type of processing that you need. But there are a lot of behavioral strategies or perspective things, cognitive strategies, relaxation techniques, distraction techniques, all kinds of things to help.
Certainly. Did I tell you guys about the time my car was stolen when I was in high school?
I don't think
No.
so.
Oh, was it from
Actually,
a
yeah,
bully?
I think you did. Yeah.
Did I tell it here?
I don't think
Was
so.
it-
No.
I was a senior in high school, and I lived in a small town. It was a two high school town. Everyone kind of knew everybody, really. And my car was stolen. Like a Monday morning, I walked out to my driveway to get in my Volkswagen Rabbit to drive to school, and it wasn't there. I was like, whoa, what happened here? And I should preface this to say, I'm not sure that I was the target of bullying, but it's probable that maybe I was. Like, you know, there were kids who, I had a lot of friends, but there were kids who maybe didn't like me so much. So I don't know. It may have been bullying. 5 days after the car was stolen, it was found and towed back to my home, and it had 4 flat tires, and the stereo was stolen, and all this stuff. My Letterman's jacket was stolen. Bunch of stuff was just broken in the car, and carved into the car, into the paint of the car, was "F you," "F off," and true to the times, the word "rad" was carved in with like a knife. And so I went and got new tires in the car and new seat belts. They were cut out, and put a new stereo in the car. But I'm pretty sure, like, this is kind of dicey, you know. I probably had been targeted here for this. And I didn't have the money, and the car wasn't worth it to get a paint job. So I drove around town with F you,
Oh
the
no.
full words, F you, F off, and rad right on the car. And it was kind of beat up. But one of my friends, like the next week, he looked at my car and he said, let's do something about this. So he took out his key, his own car key, and he carved his name into the hood of my car, like in a heart. Right. And pretty soon, other friends were carving their name into my car with their keys. And my whole car became like a yearbook, like signature page. Like everyone wanted to carve their name into this car, right onto the paint of the car, and just carve right into that. And it became kind of cool for me. And it was, again, I'm not sure if it was really bullying or not, but it was something that was sort of a source of shame or like, oh, this is an uncomfortable thing. But to be able to I guess through my friends be able to kind of lean on some of their love and kind of turn it into something that was more positive and actually kind of funny was a really nice outcome.
Cool. I like that.
So
It's
I
a really
guess
cool story.
Great.
I guess what I would say when it comes to the bullying stuff is, if at all possible, try not to lean into the negatives. Try not to lean into the bullies. Try to do what you can to lean into the people who love you.
Yeah.
The people who are gonna accept it and love you and support you and just let you know that you're cared for. It's so tempting to focus on the ones who are negative towards you, but if you have other people out there who love you, try to focus on them, because that makes all the difference in the world.
That's great.
Yeah. Great story.
I would not want to be around while people are purposely putting stuff, like I could just shudder thinking about the sound that must make
I
living
know.
like in the side of a car. So
Yeah.
The sound was horrible and the car looked horrible, but it was
cool thing. It kind of took
Cool.
it made it its own thing. That makes me think there's if you watch I think America's Got Talent or something, whatever, Simon Cowell's on, and there's a song and a girl came on. I guess she posts videos and stuff on the internet, YouTube, and there's a lot of trolls bringing her down and saying really mean things. So she just literally made a song of all their comments. That's like all the words are exactly just what people said, and it sounds great. It got really, I thought it was, you could probably YouTube it, but I just thought it was really neat. She literally took all the negative and just made it into a song. And it was really cool, and it sounded awesome, and it was funny.
Blackout poems.
Yeah, blackout poems. Yeah.
So
what are
blackout
those?
poems, when somebody sends a long negative comment, or a decent sized negative comment, but then you black out the words you don't want, and you end up making a poem out of the select words within the comment.
Oh, nice.
And you can really, I've seen some bakers, I guess they're like chefs and bakers or one person in Alberta. So she's been getting some hate comments, which is super weird because she bakes for a living and is funny and genuine. But yeah, so she's been posting blackout poems from all of her hate comments.
It's great. Really, truly transforming this negative into something that's more positive, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Rand, I'm curious, when all these people were writing on your car, did you do a handwriting analysis and see if one matched the rad or the you're like Barry, it was you. Let's get you some support.
I should have done that, but no, I didn't. I think people had just had fun doing this sort of absurd thing of scratching their name into a car, but I should have looked at the handwriting analysis. But it did a good job of covering up the bad words, so that was nice.
That's good.
That's good.
Brooke, I love this topic. This is great. This is
Cool.
helpful.
Yeah.
And insightful to get into this stuff. This is good. Did we cover your topic?
Yep. I think so.
Okay. Well, then we will end with that. And we'll say goodnight for now. Good night to those who were bullied and those who were former bullies, and hopefully not continuing to be bullies. But we will say goodnight. That's it. Like and subscribe. Apple, Google, Podbean, Audible, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube. Send your questions to info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Tell a friend or two. And good night to
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.